Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. And as you've been listening, I like to feature stories from business leaders in Asia. And today we have a special guest that is going to talk to us about the big word SEX, sex, right? Today, all the way from Singapore, we have Jingjin Liu, the CEO and co-founder of ZaZaZu. Right, so ZaZaZu, so this is from their website. ZaZaZu helps women to better understand their bodies, remove self-limiting beliefs, and ultimately unleash their true potentials. And one of the things I really like is they have a workshop called Confidence in the Bedroom Leads to Confidence in the Boardroom. So that is something I want to talk about today as well. So Jingjin Liu, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Bob.
You're welcome. So I like to start off. So this is called the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. So I always ask my guests the first question, which is, what is your favorite Kung Fu movie?
I would have said this the title of that movie, but actually my favorite Kung Fu movie most probably Rush Hours. Remember Rush Hour with Jackie Chan? We might from a different generation.
I don't know. I assure you, Jingjin, we are the same generation. So I love the Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan combination. That was a very comedy, and I hope they come back. For some reason, Chris Tucker is not doing any more movies nowadays, but Jackie Chan is still going strong. Still going strong. And yeah, so Rush Hour is very funny. I love the scene where they fight and they jump from the building and so many things happen. And the funniest scene I remember was one that Chris Tucker said, "Oh, what's your name?" And he said, "My name is you." I said, my name is me. And what's your name? My name is you. So all the Asian names, me, you. So that is a funny scene that I most remember. All right, so let's get into it. So today we have a sexual well-being expert with us. So just reading some statistics to give a bit of context before I get into the questions. So this is from ZaZaZu's website as well. 90% of working women face a conflict of interest while balancing family and professional obligations. 84% of women face stereotypes or judgments around female health, conditions such as periods, postpartum syndromes, and menopause. Women are taught from a young age to be ashamed of their bodies. We are conditioned to stay small, look pretty, and have no flaws. And if you do, and not we, but if women do, they must admit them. So starting this off, a lot of things when it comes to sexual health around sexual wellness are taboo. Just to give a bit of context before I get into the questions, is like, what are some of the taboos out there?
I mean, SEX as such is already taboo, right? In the moment where you mention just pick any person on the street or in office, pick any person anywhere, when you ask them any question related to SEX, the big taboo word, if you just ask them, what do you associate with SEX? I think people the immediate answer they will get porn, the first one, number one answer. Number two is dodgy sex toy store. As Singapore, we have this Lucky Plaza where it's a little bit dodgy Geylang, and in Hong Kong, it's the other street, and you always associate something dirty, something taboo, something vice with it. But how we all come from SEX. Without SEX, none of us will be here. So I think this is like the biggest taboo, the biggest the topic as such is already a taboo. So everything around it, from female body, male's body, genital parts. We can talk about stomach, we can talk about brain, but we cannot talk about penises or vaginas, right? I mean, these are things, everything associated with SES is taboo.
Yeah, I come from a Muslim country. So I remember mentioning the word even condom in our lecture, and the lecturer just said, "Don't mention this word in class." Okay, so I'll start off with personal questions just to ease a bit. So I sometimes in my podcast I like to ask personal questions because the podcast is, in the end, I also want to learn and improve myself. So number one is what are the biggest misconceptions about sex for men? So I'm a male, and a lot of my audience are on LinkedIn, and and a lot of my listeners are male, and a lot of my guests are male as well. So what are the biggest misconceptions for men when it comes to sex?
I think we have done actually pretty research. In the meanwhile, we have now 2000. It's a research we started when we started the company in 2020. We asked various different questions with people from different age group, and then over the time, now over 3 years, we have collected, I think in the meanwhile, 2,500 answers around different questions. And one of the questions is actually, what is the biggest misconception from men's perspective? What do they think is important in sex, for example? Men think that sex needs to last 20 minutes, for example, onwards. So men tend to think, because of the social norm, because of we are within the society, we don't talk enough about sexual education. So our perception about sex, especially for men, is massively shaped by how the porn industry have displayed how sex should be. So these are performers, that they are, and then so men think that sex needs to last 15 to 20 minutes at least. And this is the first one. The second biggest misconception is that men think that penetration is the only way to give women pleasure, that women can have orgasm through penetration, which is exactly the opposite, where you have different arousal area. I think we get too much into the details, but this is by far the two biggest misconception, that men think they need to perform. And when they need to perform, they need to, sex is penetrative. I would say the two biggest misconception.
So the first conception is that they think 20 minutes. Actually, I think a lot of men think it needs to be 40 minutes, because that's the average length of a porn video. of a porn video. Yeah. So the average length is about 40 minutes. And then they think that they need to penetrate, so to give sexual pleasure, which they don't. And yeah, from personal experience, I think there's a real lack of knowledge. Hanging out with men, talking about these topics, we don't even talk about it most of the times. I know there's a lack of knowledge in this part. So like my biggest question now, this is the age-old question, and every single man will ask this question. So Jingjin Liu, as the sexual wellness expert, the biggest question I'll ask you is, does size matter?
It really doesn't, if you know how to operate it. Let me put it this way. It really doesn't.
Yeah, there you have it, right? There you have it, because this is a question that I think most men will ask. So, oh my God. So personally, so like coming to my personal, okay, so listeners listening, so like my personal questions when it comes. So yes, like you said, performance anxiety plays a thing, right? When I have sexual relations with a person, I'm afraid of feedback, not sort of afraid of feedback, but afraid of
feedback.
Rumors, like they'll go around telling, oh no, Bob was not doing, he doesn't know what he's doing. So a lot of times I pretend I know what I'm doing. And we are very conscious about our size. There's some things that we think about a lot. We also think about performance. So we need to, we need to run a marathon, right? We need to 40 minutes, 20, 40 minutes, right? So like when it comes to I think mostly men are afraid of feedback. I personally, I'm afraid to ask. I'm very afraid to ask. And we are very afraid. The most worst thing that we are afraid is that word spreads around that, oh no, this person is not very good at this thing. So even like sharing something intimate, right? Even when I had my first sexual experience, I pretended it was not. I pretended I knew my stuff.
Everybody.
So what are your sexual tips for men? How can men be better sexual partners?
I think it's actually not of operating the actual act. It's actually about understanding your partner's needs, because every woman is different. And as you said, how do we get better in things how do we get better in doing certain things in our daily life, in our job, in computer skills, in programming skills? It's over exercise, right? It's doing things we learn, we fail, we learn again. And by sexual wellness is not much different. At the end of the day, we need to understand the customer in that case. What is your partner's need? What does she like and dislike about verbal communication? And about communicating, okay, do you like when I do this? Do you prefer this? It's a subtle questioning in a way, but it's also about once we open the mouth and communicate, then you eventually you will have a conversation, and then you will understand better. Because otherwise, like when you go to the restaurant, when you order a dish, when you together, you don't even know whether she likes fried egg or not. For example, we always ask people, how would you like your eggs? Do you like scrambled, sunny side up, Chinese style? What kind of egg do you like? If you don't know, you order something she doesn't even like. It's not that different in terms of sex. So communication is key to understand the other person's perspective, and don't pretend you know. I know it's easier said than done, but you can't know. The worst case is that it's better to under promise and over deliver than the other way around. Like everything in life.
Amazing. That is the best. That is the best advice: under promise and over deliver. Because I do have a lot of male friends that like to talk a lot of they talk themselves up and then they underperform. Like I like the word you used, which was subtle questioning, because women are also conscious. In my experience, like they are so conscious of letting the men feel that they're disappointed.
Feelings.
So they are also, sometimes they will fake it, or they will pretend, or they will just cover it up.
Yeah.
So like, can you share like a bit more detail what is subtle questioning? Like I wouldn't go and say, hey, so how was it? So they don't want to disappoint me. I say, oh yeah, it was okay, it was good. Like, so like, how does this, how do I ask better questions, or how do I do the subtle questioning?
I think there's the big word of foreplay. And I think if we don't understand as a society how sex works, we really don't understand how foreplay works. It's like getting into the mood, right? It's like when you have a dinner, you can talk about some of the things over dinner before you actually go into the act. You can have, a conversation up front with a glass of wine, or in whatever situation, create an environment where both feel safe. And then you can start actually certain foreplay, for example, like kissing, touching. All these kind of things, usually we don't, we like to downplay these kind of things and go into the actual part of the act. But the sex is a journey. It's about from starting, in the middle, and to the end. When you rush into the middle, when you actually perform on both sides, you can't rush into these kind of things. So in order, when you create the mood, for example, this is already the environment, lighting up a candle, setting certain scents. These are things, it sounds so simple. People always ask, what is the big secret? There is no big, magic around this kind of things. It's just create a environment and create intention around the act. And then once you have the mood, it's much easier to ask certain questions. And I think in terms of asking questions, it's a conversation that, do you like it in this way? For example, in Chinese, sounds very different than in Malay, than in English, than in German. So I think the cultural context matters as well. But from an Asian perspective, we rather like subtle things, right? So I refrain myself a bit from giving specific advice, because every couple is different, every language is different. But what generally works is, once you have created an environment where both feel safe, and then you are gentle and you start slow, generally you already have a good start. And then you can subtly ask, not, do you like it this way? When you ask the question, the tone matters as well, the sound matters as well. And we need to trust a bit of our gut feel as well, right? When we go into a certain act, whether she likes something or does not like something, you have a certain feeling as well. This is valid for both sides.
Amazing, Jingjin. So the next question, so another also personal question, is that I am learning to sing, right? So I take vocal lessons, and it's quite common to take vocal lessons, but I also want to be better at sex. So, but I don't know where is the right resource. And like you said, the best, not the best place, but the place that we mostly learn is porn. So,
Yes.
Unfortunately, but like, how do we get better at sex? Is there, like, what would you recommend? Do you recommend, there's no really online courses about this? There's no Udemy for sex, or I'm not sure. I don't
sex
see
for
that.
dummies.
Sex for
like
dummies,
that.
or what do you do in your so like, how do we, like, I believe in studying. I love, like, even for this podcast I did my homework, but I want to know how to do my homework for sex.
I think this is my very personal perspective. I think at the end of the day, what is good for you does not mean that is good for me. Every woman's different. Every partner is different. Some women like, some women like, let's just get to the sex per se. We have different kind of arousal level. Some women, there are certain arousal area like behind the ears, your hands, feet, various different body parts respond to different arousals. So number one for every man out there who listen to this podcast is to understand your partner's need. There is, because what is good for Jingjin does not mean it's good for Vanessa, does not mean it's good for Angela. So every woman's different. Understand your partner's need, make a good lover at the end. So I have to just sharing a personal story. A good friend of mine, who has suffered long time anxiety of performing, and we met actually during. It's funny when you said you come from a Muslim country. One of the very first talk about how to overcome erectile dysfunction, I held it here in Singapore with the Islamic Culture Institute of Islamic Culture. A imam approached us actually saying, and we want give our youth who just got married and they're suffering a lot of anxiety of erectile dysfunction, but we want to keep the marriage intact. So how can you give us some tips, hints, if men cannot perform due to medical conditions, how can people still be in love? That was one of the biggest aha moment for me, where things demystified everything we say about Muslim country, because that was the most open-minded talk I ever held in front of young married people. So one of them became our client, and then he suffered a lot from erectile dysfunction. And but then he never communicated with his wife. And then he took a lot of pills and so on. And then once they came to see our coaches, they had over communication. And then turns out she doesn't like penetration at all. She suffers actually from certain pain because he doesn't know how to do it, because like most of people, we never learned. So they started to have external stimulations, which is great for him, is great for her. So now they actually have much better sex life than before, although there is no traditional sex act as a penetration involved. Not good for the kids, but in terms of a sexual life, they have a great sexual relationship with each other. So it's really crucial to understand what does good mean for your partner, because she is the person, give you the mark at the end.
Amazing. Yes, one of the benchmarks I use as well. Not really the best benchmark. Probably subtle questioning is better. But for me, if the customer is a return customer, I think it is the feedback. But anyway, I think my question would be more that you mentioned the different parts of the female sexual organs. I think most men don't even know that. So is there what should we do? Should we pick up the biology book, or should we read Kama Sutra, which a lot of people read? so like one of the things, okay, so this is, I'll just say this on my podcast. One of the things I really want to learn is oral sex, which most Asian men are not very good at. So just saying that, putting out there. So like, is there a way or a best way to learn, or is it they just pick up the biology or Kama Sutra book?
I think it's again to understand your partner's need. I think because I think some women like the act as such, some don't. And then the vulva is actually, we as society always say it's the vagina. Vagina is actually just the canal. The whole female organ is called the vulva. So there are, I think, 28,000 nerves, if I'm not mistaken, around that area. So it's very sensitive, it's very subtle, and the clitoris is really the pleasure organ for the one who doesn't know. There's no function in female body. There's this part called the clit, which has the sole purpose of giving pleasure. And around the whole vulva, there are so many different nerves, and depends on your the length of your tongue, the friction of your tongue. There are different ways: sucking, licking, touching. It's a combination of many, many things. At the end of the day, it's the partner that you are giving pleasure to. She needs to tell you what feels good, what doesn't. And this is again coming to the communication. Very often we are so busy in doing the things because we think the more we do, the better it is. And very often it's the opposite. It's the speed, it's the friction, it's the mood, it's a combination of things. So there's no one size fits all. At the end of the day, you still have to understand, what does she like? Does she like oral sex at all? If she doesn't, you can be the best oral sex giver of all time. You are not fulfilling any point in that case.
Awesome, Jingjin. All right, so that is the part where I ask a lot more I say selfish questions. So anyway, now switching around to women, right? So I like your mission, which is to help women to get more confidence in the bedroom and to eventually translate that to the boardroom as well. So how do women, get more confidence in the bedroom? I think this is something, I think when I listened to your interview on the Rebel Squad, something that you talk about, and then like, how do you bring that into the boardroom as well?
So one of our signature workshops, actually, we offer ZaZaZu. We offer all kind of workshop towards corporate, big corporate companies, and one of the signature how to help women in the company to overcome actually confidence issue, overcome self-limiting beliefs. We tackle it from a very different angle, and one of them is sexual well-being, because the hypothesis we have is that women are generally not good in asking for more salaries, asking for the corporate title, women are not good in demanding more. We are trained from when we were little girls to put others' needs first and never ask things for yourself. When you have learned this from when you are a little girl, over the years, it becomes a muscle, and you have trained that muscle so strongly. So women never are always humble and nice, and let's not demand more. So you need to start from somewhere. You can't just be confident. You have your whole life, you have been told, don't brag, be the humble girl. And suddenly you come to the working force, and then you need to demand, I want to have a better salary. I want to have the corporate, I want to have be the team leader. I want to be the CEO one day. You can't just train like that. So you need to start to train your narrative of asking somewhere first. Where is the best way? Where is the safest place to train? Is at home. So our hypothesis is that if you can't ask the closest man in your life, which is your partner or your husband, in that case, that's just in a hetero relationship, if you can't ask him in the bedroom where it's just two of you saying, okay, I want to have oral sex because that thing what you do with your tongue on my clit feels good. If saying that feels awkward and you don't dare to say that, how do you dare to tell your boss, let's say as a male, or your peer in the workforce who you don't actually have an intimate relationship with, saying, I want to have more salary because I deserve it? This is the hypothesis. That's why you train at home to have uncomfortable conversation with someone that you are the closest to, which is a man. And then you transfer the skill over the time in the workforce to demand what you deserve.
That is amazing. So having the practice to ask in the bedroom helps to translate to the confidence in the boardroom,
Yes.
which is very, very important. Like you said, where women are trained to not ask most of their childhood. And one of the questions that I like to follow up with is to have more confidence in the boardroom, you need to be in the boardroom in the first place. And unfortunately, in Asia, most boardrooms are still filled with very old men. Like, what can companies do more? So a lot of my audience are from LinkedIn. What can companies do more to, let's say, boost the confidence of women, or to elevate them, or to motivate them to take up more positions in the boardroom?
I think generally you need to come push and pull. Need to come from both sides. I think company can enable, you can have, starting from working from home, this is already something that remote working that enable women to do things, to have their flexible time, because women just have genuinely, as much as want to change the social norm, women carry more household burden. Let it be childcare, let it be household, let it be cooking dinner, things like that, more than men. As long as this is the case, women need to have more flexible working hours. You can't expect a woman to start working at 9 and go back home at 9. If you have this kind of working policies in the corporate environment, women generally, they wouldn't have that. They are designed to fail because then there are other things at home they need to take care of. And if you appreciate, for example, a lot of company, I mean, especially in Asia, we're still, even in China, I mean, they appreciate this 996 kind of working ethics. And if you want to have more women in the boardroom, 996 culture, women are set up to fail in that case. And I think having that healthy corporate culture, more flexibility for women towards women's need, that is number one. At the same time, women need to create more visibility for themselves. And I think that is something, we have done a lot of study with women, the same product manager as a woman and same product manager as men, they have the same outcome in work. And men speak very differently about their result versus women. And I mean, this over-promise and under-deliver, I'm not generalizing it, but women tend to over-deliver and under-promise because they don't want to disappoint people as well. And then once they have their achievement, they always believe that the great work they have done will speak for itself. But the number one career booster for any gender is to create a visibility. And great work won't speak for itself. There's a Chinese saying, we say the crying baby get the milk. So the one who speak up, the one who actually gets their achievement, their work out there, will eventually get attention from the decision makers and get the right sponsor to give them the championship, and so on.
Amazing. Yes, the crying baby gets the milk. Like I know this because looking back at my studies and also my career as a man and being a young man, when I was younger, I was very confident without the adequate skill sets, and I'll just go out there and ask for a raise and whatever, just crash and burn. And I until now say, hey, where does the confidence come? I don't know. But for women, it's very different. Like you said, they want to over deliver, and I see this a lot in my peers who are women as well. They want to be even when they want to, let's say, become a marketing expert, they say, oh, I need to take all the certification. When the man, I worked for Microsoft for 1 year and I'm an expert. So that is a very typical situation right there. And one of the things that I going through your ZaZaZu's website is you also talk about microaggressions, right? So before I move on to the next question is what are some examples of these? Like I imagine it's microaggressions towards women. What do you mean by microaggressions as well?
Microaggressions are actually, it's not women specific, but women experience a bit more than men. And of course, I mean, people of color, we experience more than genuinely white people as well. Let me just put it in that way. And generally, microaggressions is a subtle form of discrimination towards gender, towards race, towards stereotyping. For example, we did a workshop recently somewhere, and I was standing behind in the lift, and in the lift there were two people talking about a manager role, and out of context, I just hear. So one of them is saying, but when women get this kind of roles, they tend to taking things very seriously. They tend to over-exaggerate their power. So something around those lines. In the moment where you say something like this, you're generalizing for all women. For example, or you say when the Chinese are, for example, why I like rush hour, because when I went to Germany when I was 16, they always say the Chinese, the Asian, the Chinese are calm, they don't have humor, and they only know to study, or they only know to wash plates, because at that time, a lot of immigrants go to Europe and then the US as well, and open restaurants at that time, the immigrants, and this the stereotyping they have, and rush hour actually gave us a very different perspective of what Chinese people can do as well. So it's generally women, for example, experience a lot. Okay, oh, you just got married. Oh, when do you consider her to have kids? Or can I, for example, African ladies get very often in our company saying, okay, oh, your hair is so cool. Can I touch your hair? All these kind of things. These are not subtle. These are not real discrimination, but with a very subtle hint of, okay, you wouldn't ask, I wouldn't, if I would meet Bob today in life, I wouldn't ask Bob, can I touch your hair, right? So things that you wouldn't ask anybody else, but you would only ask women or ask certain gender, certain group, certain race. These are things that are microaggressive behavior.
Yes, it is a lot of the stereotyping and assumptions, but it's not very blatant. Like you said, it's micro. So it's like very inadvertently, I'll say, oh yeah, are you sure like women can drive, some things like that. Yeah.
Exactly. No, exactly like that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are microaggressions. And one topic that is very prominent now in the West, not so much here, is sexual harassment in the workplace. So in the West, I don't think it's implemented in Singapore yet, but in the West, right now, you cannot even date your colleagues. You need to sign a form. so you cannot have any relations with colleagues because it will be very sticky for the company. How does ZaZaZu help with that on the sexual harassment part?
I think what we can do at the end of the day, one of the narrative we always advocate is very often let's focus on things that we can control, because often we can't control. If I in the workforce, if I encounter someone someone is like subtly sexually harass me, asking me out, for example, various times, making comment about my look, making comment about my appearance. I mean, this happens actually on a regular basis, but women just don't speak up. The problem with not speaking up is that why don't women speak up? Firstly, is because they think it's too subtle. For example, someone said to me, I really like your dress. It really shaped your body really well. I mean, I think he actually meant well, but it's inappropriate at work. If he were a friend of mine, that would be completely fine. The problem is when you say something to me in the workplace, women generally think, oh, if I now correct him, I'm making a scene out of nowhere because I assume positive intention. Most probably it is positive intention. However, when this kind of comments grows over time, there will be a time where you can't say anything anymore because it has grown to a big monster, but you actually missed the time point to say something. So we scope microaggression also as a death by thousand cuts. So it's very small, subtle humiliation or subtle harassment where you don't feel the urge to do something right now, but over time, it could bury you. So what we help women with is that which time point should you say something? How do you say things like this? And then train the company at the same time, what is appropriate and what is not in the work context, right?
Awesome. And yeah, it's being mindful about the things that we do or say. So let me flip the question around. So a lot of my audience are on LinkedIn and a lot of them are men. So what can men do better to create a better working environment for women? So what can men do better in fact, like being more, for example, should we be more aware of the periods, like when this was something that we are aware of in the office last time when I was working. Should we be more considerate? What can men do more?
I mean, just be more cognizant about a woman's generated schedule. I mean, having open conversations, it's like with sex. If you have a genuine conversation, I mean, we help corporates to create a inclusive workplace where we can have this kind of genuine conversation. For example, for new moms, when they return back to work, many of them are still pumping milk, for example, and they have certain schedules. So for example, 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. for some of the moms is their time to pump milk. But then if you as a woman, you don't tell 4 p.m. is the time I need to pump my milk. For example, what we advise our clients, they will put their schedule actually in the calendar because the company allowed this kind of open communication. So everyone knows, okay, with Jingjin, we don't set a meeting at 4. We only set at 4:30, for example. Or when you know that your women, they have kids, they have to pick up kids at 5 p.m., don't set up meeting at 5 p.m. But then for the microaggressions, also a form that people set up meeting at 5 p.m. because they know women have to leave at 5 p.m. these kind of subtle things. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, open conversation, we assume positive intention with each other, we respect each other, and women have, because of our hormonal cycle as well, when you have your period, for example, when you are pregnant, when you are post-pregnancy, and to all the way towards to menopause, women have very different needs. At the end of the day, we need to embrace a company culture where women can express their certain schedules, and then men need to respect that, and vice versa. So I think that's also not that different than respecting men's schedule at work as well, because I think the workplace generally is more designed towards men's needs. Like I mean, if you look at we still have the old boy club, men still, you know, the big decision about promotion are still made often over the golf place or over the night, you know, by clubbing. And these are things that in the moment where you create this kind of exclusive groups where you, because of women's schedule, you automatically exclude them and they won't be part of this group. And in that way, you automatically exclude women from the leadership potentials.
Amazing, amazing. So that is very profound there. One of my experiences in one of my previous companies is that they allowed a more flexible working schedule, especially for moms. Like you drop off your kids at 7 something, and then they allow them to come to work at 8 and finish work early to pick up their kids. So that's an example, because
and then the thing, I think, sorry to interrupt you there.
No worries.
It's basically just because and women, this is something we say to the corporate all the time. Very often they think, okay, if you embrace a culture where working from 9 to 9 is a default, nobody can deliver things from 9 to 9. If I have an employee tell me I can finish my work from 9 to 9, either he is insufficient or the workload is not properly distributed. So if you have a woman, for example, if you allow her to do a lot of things, for example, drop the kids before, have enough time to pick up the kids, have dinner, and then put the kids into bed, women are very appreciative. Many female employees we know of, they will start to catch up some of the work in the evening. I rarely aware of women who, because of their kids' schedule, because their schedule at home, that they neglect certain work obligations. The women are just genuinely more sufficient when you have kids. They need to, for example, project meetings. Very often we have a room of men discussing because there is nothing, they don't have a deadline. Whereas when we add a woman into the project team, she has to pick up the kids at 5. She will make a decision as a project manager before 5. And then things are better done than not done. Imperfectly, things are better done imperfectly than perfectly not done. So I think that embracing women's schedule that make work and really make a work-life balance. I actually don't like this work, but work and life need to be immersive, need to be merged, not to be mutually exclusive.
That is awesome. Yeah. So like one of the examples there is the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. So she had to leave Prime Minister role. Is very hard, but she made the best out of it. So last word before we go is, like, a lot of my listeners are business leaders on LinkedIn, and they are CEOs, they are speakers, they are business owners, etc. So I know you said, have conversations, listen to your staff, and what else, other advice would you give to decision makers? Should they have more policies and be flexible to women, and what else?
I think be cognizant that, for example, one of the things we always say in talent review, very often the decision makers are still men. I think I have to say I see a big trend that men advocating a lot for women, but be aware of the unsung heroes, I always call them, because you have a lot of women, as we discussed before, they don't voice out their strengths, they don't voice out what they can do, they don't voice out their achievements. So then you end up, we have a very biased view, because the one who raised their hands, let's just say, very stereotyping now, I'm saying more men, when they achieve the same result as women, they raise their hands. So instead of calling out, putting out, getting out the ones that raising their hands, who are men, who are more, I would say, extroverted. Be aware also of the women, who are, be more aware about the women if they don't raise their hand. How about what is their work performance? Really seek for this kind of talents, but who don't voice their achievement out in that way. When you have talent review, when you always pick the ones who want to go to the next level, you will always have the ones who are you will have a more male-dominated crowd, because boys have learned from competition when they are kids. They want to win, they want to go ahead, versus women, because they are humble, they don't want to voice their achievement, or they are too shy, or cultural background, or they don't trust themselves, their skills. Look for them and have conversation with them. There's a promotion coming. I think you are a great candidate, but I want to understand from your perspective, do you think that, would you like to have that role? Would you like to give it a try? Still now, we still need to actively approach female talents until, I hope 10 years, 20 years later, women have developed this kind of skills where they can voice things out, whether you are introvert or extrovert, regardless which cultural background you have. But today, as long as we still have this kind of invisible glass ceiling in a way women don't voice out their achievement, leaders need to be more cognizant about female talent who don't raise their hands.
Thank you, Jingjin. That is so cool. So look out for the unsung heroes. A lot of women are doing a lot of the work. I know from my personal experience, a lot of men take the credit and a lot of women do a lot of work in the background. so look out for the unsung heroes. So last question before we go. So I know that ZaZaZu does a lot of workshops, including the confidence in the bedroom, confidence in the boardroom workshop. So why should companies work with ZaZaZu?
I think for us, to create a more attractive workplace for women. So if for us, it's always, we want to help women to remove their self-limiting beliefs, to have positive self-talks. The social norms, the society as from today, many things are still designed for the default men. So in order to let women to go ahead and beyond, we need to consciously spend more effort. From both sides, women need to voice their skill out, need to have more confidence in their competence. At the same time, corporates and company need to allow to create space for women as well to want to become leaders in that company. I think that workforce, the talent war has never been more fierce than now. Women want to work for a company who has genuinely the right value that allow them to combine work and life. And when you don't create a company, the good culture for women, when women don't feel appreciated, when don't feel they can go ahead and beyond in your company, they will go away. And then once, we don't need to discuss that anymore, that if you lose the female talent in your company, then they are the future. And more women, we already have now from today, more women have master degrees than men, and then women are more cognizant about their position in the society as well. So to embracing and incorporating your female talent, keep them, maintain them in the company to create this kind of culture where women want to stay is crucial for the future progression of any company.
Thank you, Jingjin. That is truly the future, more inclusive. Like you said, if all companies were the 996 culture, and why would women want to work in the company and go up the career ladder just to be another 996 CEO? Yes. So thank you so much, Jingjin, for taking the time. It was really a very good interview here. I love your answers, and it was very impactful as well.
Thank you, Bob, for having me, for getting the word out about taboo topics, as well as helping women to go beyond and ahead.
Thank you so much, Jingjin.
Thank you.